65,000 people, and you could hear a heartbeat monitor. Inside Paycor Stadium on the night of January 2nd, 2023, 65,000 fans sat in a silence that no stadium is built to hold. 23 million more were watching Monday Night Football at home, the Buffalo Bills against the Cincinnati Bengals, a game with playoff seeding on the line. Damar Hamlin, the Bills' safety, had just made a routine tackle on Bengals receiver T. Higgins. Seconds later, he stood up, and then he did not. His body dropped straight down. Team staff sprinted across the field before the broadcast even understood what it was showing.
A scary scene in Cincinnati Monday night. Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin in cardiac arrest, collapsing after a play. That sending shock to those on and off the field, including VCU cardiologist Dr. Jeremy Turlington.
I think everybody's working diagnosis is, if you watch, he made that tackle on the gentleman.
This was not the end of his story. What happened 3 years later did not happen in a stadium, and it did not happen on a football field at all. The number that matters is not the score, it is 9. 9 minutes of CPR on his chest before his heart restarted. Buffalo Bills assistant athletic trainer Denny Kellington reached him first and began compressions on live national television. Kellington saved his life in those 9 minutes. What Hamlin would do with the life he got back, including the far stranger turn it took 3 years later, off any football field, is where this story is really headed. Before the collapse, Damar Hamlin's life looked like the football dream running exactly to plan. He was raised in McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, a small working-class town outside Pittsburgh that shaped, by his own repeated account, the values he carried into the league. Long before he wore an NFL jersey, Hamlin was already giving back to it. His annual toy drive for the children of McKees Rocks started small, raising around $2,500 in its early years, funded mostly out of his own pocket while he was still building a career. He played college football at the University of Pittsburgh, close enough that McKees Rocks families could still watch him, and the Bills drafted him in the 6th round. By his second season, he was a starting safety on a defense built for a Super Bowl run. None of that made him famous. What made him famous was a hit that, on video, looked like 1,000 other tackles. Here is a part of the story that rarely gets told plainly. A 6th-round rookie contract is not generational wealth. It is a chance, one that depends on health and on staying on the field long enough to earn the second contract that actually changes a family's life. On January 2nd, Hamlin was still in that fragile, unproven stretch. He was not a star with a shoe deal and a mansion. He was a young defensive back from a steel town, trying to hold his footing in a business that lets players go without a second thought. That matters, because what happened next did not strike a celebrity at the top of the mountain. It struck a young man still climbing it in front of 23 million witnesses, at the exact moment his career should have been taking off. The broadcast never cut away. Announcers Joe Buck and Troy Aikman narrated a medical emergency in real time while staff worked over Hamlin's body at the 50-yard line. The NFL suspended the game, an almost unheard-of decision that told everyone watching this was no ordinary injury delay. Kellington started CPR within seconds.
You know, on this first day of the NFL draft, heart health is playing a bigger role following the cardiac arrest suffered by Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin.
Health reporter Seth Saul joins us with more on Hamlin's new mission.
That's right, he is on a big mission, guys. You know, Damar Hamlin survived thanks to quick treatment, and now he has become an ambassador, helping to spread the message of heart health and also the importance of fast responses to cardiac emergencies. Bills safety Damar Hamlin has returned to life as normal on and off the field.
On a field where grown men are paid to be the strongest version of a human being, the strongest thing in the building became a set of hands pushing down on a stopped heart. An ambulance rolled onto the turf. Players who had been rivals a minute earlier stood in a loose circle, some on their knees, some weeping openly, some turning away because they could not watch. An automated defibrillator was used to restart Hamlin's heart before paramedics from the University of Cincinnati Medical Center rushed him off the field in critical condition. The scoreboard still glowed with a game that no longer mattered to anyone in the stadium. And then something happened that the sport was never built for. The prayer that followed did not stay inside one stadium. It crossed leagues and rivalries and the ordinary line between fans of opposing teams. The broadcast went to a break and simply did not come back to football. Analysts who are paid to always have something to say sat in studios with nothing to say and prayed on air. Players from other franchises posted messages through the night. Churches with no tie to Buffalo or Cincinnati spoke Hamlin's name in their Wednesday services. And in the strangest sign of all, that small McKees Rocks toy drive began to move. Ordinary people, unable to do anything else with their fear, started sending money to a young man they had never met, $10 and $20 at a time. A sport built on statistics and betting lines simply stopped. And for several days, a whole country prayed for one heartbeat to come back. For days, Damar Hamlin lay unconscious on a ventilator at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, what doctors would later confirm as Commotio cordis, a rare cardiac event caused by a blow to the chest, arriving at the precise millisecond of the heart's electrical cycle, had stopped him cold. It is one of the rarest events in all of sports medicine, a fraction of a second of impossibly bad timing. Commotio cordis is almost always fatal without immediate treatment. Medical research puts survival, when there is no rapid CPR and defibrillation, in the low single digits. That is the statistic that turns those 9 minutes on the field from a footnote into the whole story. When Hamlin regained consciousness, still on a breathing tube and unable to speak, he asked for a pen. Dr. Timothy Pritz, chief of trauma surgery at the medical center, described the moment to reporters days later. Hamlin's first written question was 2 words: "Did we win?" Pritz told him yes, and then said the line that would follow Hamlin for the rest of his life: "You won the game of life." That was not scripted for a highlight reel. It was a trauma surgeon's honest answer to a patient who had just come back from clinical death, and it became the lens through which Hamlin started to make sense of what had happened to him. A doctor named the miracle before Hamlin did. You have probably had a version of this moment yourself. Not on a field and not in front of millions, but the moment where the life you assumed you had is suddenly not guaranteed, and everything you were chasing goes quiet. Most people get that warning in private. Hamlin got it in front of the largest audience of his life, and what he did with the warning is the part worth staying for. What came next in public was recovery, a discharge far sooner than the early prognosis suggested, and a return to football most doctors would never have predicted. What came next in private, by Hamlin's own account, was slower and far less visible. He has described the roughly 3 years since as a long internal reckoning, never filmed, never staged for a press conference. There was no single lightning strike conversion to point a camera at. There was a young man, home from the hospital with a working heart. He no longer took for granted, asking quietly why he had been sent back when the odds said he should not have been. That is the part this story has been pointing toward. The cardiac arrest was public, witnessed by 23 million people at once. What happened over the 3 years afterward stayed almost entirely private, until Hamlin decided, on his own terms, to let some of it be seen. In that stretch, what Hamlin did with his platform changed shape. The Chasing M's Foundation, the charity behind that original McKees Rocks toy drive, saw donations surge from around $2,500 to more than $8.6 million in the days after his collapse, as strangers turned their shock and relief into money. Hamlin did not simply keep it. He aimed the foundation at CPR training and defibrillator access, building a mission out of the very intervention that had saved him. The injury was not the only thing that slowed him in those years. A torn pectoral muscle in the 2025 season took him off the field for a long stretch, and Hamlin has said the forced stillness became part of his spiritual preparation rather than only a setback. Time, in his words, that let him get right with God. The sacrifice in Damar Hamlin's story is not a mansion given up or a film role turned down. It is quieter than that and harder to measure. He gave up the easiest version of his own comeback. The simplest story to sell after Commotio cordis was pure athletic triumph: return, rack up tackles, close it out with a highlight. Hamlin came back to football, then played more and more sparingly. Through the first 5 games of the 2025 season, he recorded a single tackle, and by then his playing future had become one of the smallest questions in his life, because the thing that had changed most about Damar Hamlin had nothing to do with football at all. He gave up the certainty of a starting job to let his body and his faith recover on their own clock, even as the speculation grew that his NFL career might be ending rather than rebuilding. He gave up the easy applause that comes when an athlete overcomes an injury and returns to glory, and traded it for a story that admitted the glory had stopped being the point. He gave up something harder too. For 3 years, Hamlin refused to turn his private reckoning into content. No docuseries, no tell-all time to a season opener. He let the silence sit while the world wanted a tidy resolution, and in an industry that runs on constant visibility, that restraint cost him something real. But first, months after Cincinnati, he did something the cameras did catch. At the 2023 ESPY Awards, Damar Hamlin walked on stage to present the first Pat Tillman Award for service, and he gave it not to a player, but to the training and medical staff who had worked to save his life. Denny Kellington stood among them. Hamlin tried to speak, and could not. He broke down and held the men who had brought him back. It was the answer to the question the whole country had been asking since that night on the field. What do you say to the person who restarted your heart? Hamlin said it without words. What he could not have known that night was that the restarted heart was only the beginning. What he gained over the next 3 years does not show up in contract years or tackle counts. He gained a certainty about his own life that he did not have on the turf in Cincinnati. He gained a foundation that now trains everyday people to save lives with CPR and defibrillators, the very thing that had saved his. And he gained, in his own words, being right with God, a phrase he has said out loud in public rather than kept to himself. The football numbers stayed small. What grew was everything those numbers could never measure. Then came the quietest, most deliberate moment of the entire story, and it happened nowhere near a stadium. On January 9th, almost 3 years to the week after his heart stopped in Cincinnati, Damar Hamlin was baptized in Buffalo. Sports Spectrum reported that team chaplain Len van den Bos lowered him into the water with teammate Christian Benford standing there alongside his family and Bill's staff. There were no cameras from Monday Night Football this time, no 23 million witnesses, no commentators narrating over him. There was a young man who had once been declared clinically dead, walking on his own into the water on purpose, choosing the moment rather than surviving it. Speaking to reporters at Super Bowl Media Row weeks later, Hamlin said the baptism brought him a peace he had not felt before, and that his faith finally felt aligned after a season an injury had stolen from him. He credited that forced pause directly. It had prepared him, he said, for a purpose beyond football, not just delayed his return to it. The man who had asked, "Did we win from a hospital bed?" had found a different scoreboard entirely. The Buffalo News reported on the growth of his hero's scholarship, built to give students in his hometown region a real shot at opportunity. In his own words, Two Bills Drive covered its open application window as part of a larger shift in how Hamlin now uses his platform. Less about what he does on the field, more about what he leaves behind off it. Hamlin does not preach any of this at anyone. He tells it as what happened to him. He has not walked away from football, and he has not renounced his career. He has just stopped putting football at the center of the story. The center now, by his own account, is the night he died in front of 23 million people, and the 3 quiet years that no one filmed. Today, Damar Hamlin's football future is honestly unsettled. Buffalo is rebuilding its safety group around younger, faster players under new coaching. And though Hamlin re-signed on a modest 1-year deal, nothing guarantees him a spot on the final roster. 3 years ago, that sentence would have been the tragedy at the end of his story. It does not work that way for him anymore. The Chasing M's Foundation keeps expanding its defibrillator distribution and its CPR training, work that runs in a straight line back to the 9 minutes performed on him in Cincinnati. The hero's scholarship carries the same instinct forward to the next generation in his hometown, turning a near-death moment into something built to outlast his playing days. What is left is not a comeback story in the ordinary athletic sense. It is a man who has said, on the record and more than once, that his cardiac arrest was not the worst thing that ever happened to him. It was the interruption that led him, 3 years later, to the water, an event he has described as bringing him more peace than any score ever could. Whether Hamlin plays another regular season snap is still an open question. Where he has placed his certainty is not. Where fame ends, faith begins.